We have a jam-packed hour ahead where you're going to hear from a range of speakers who are going to be speaking to the importance of maintaining mental health. And it coincides not only with Mental Health Awareness Week, which is this week, but it also coincides with a huge global scoping review that has been released today, which combines over 100 academic studies, which are discussing the mental health and well-being of creative practitioners, artists, and performers, which have been which are precarious already, but have been exacerbated by the nature of the COVID pandemic. I've realized that I have not even introduced myself, which I'll do very quickly. But my name is Abiola Ogunbi. I am an actor. I am also proud to have been vice chair of the Equity Women's Committee and a writer of the Equity for Women.
Check your connection. My speaker's
of the Equity for Women toolkit, which provides also a range of.
Check your connection or use a different speaker.
Oh, I think we have.
What do you want, speakers?
I've never had a speaker.
I think. Oh.
This is a battery thing working.
I think we have someone.
Yeah, it says I've got no speaker. Audio.
That would be Christine. There you go.
Thanks so much, Christine. Thank you, Zoe. I'm really proud to be chairing this event and introducing the speakers to you, as mental health and well-being is something that is extremely important to me, and I'm sure to many. This global scoping review, which includes research done by one of our speakers today, just highlights on many different levels how the nature of creative work can exacerbate so many of the things that we need to feel well as not only as artists, but as people. And as we're going about creative work, navigating that life proves extremely difficult at any level of your career, at any age, with all circumstances. And it's something that I would say with the pandemic, we've all been aware of, not only as professionals, but as people. Based off of this review and the breadth of the research, Equity have today released a mental health charter, which outlines 5 demands based on this review to help its members navigate this field, but also help its members navigate this field with the help of employers, with the help of the government. It's something that we want to encourage our members to take a proactive stance with, but it's also something that we must acknowledge cannot be expected to be done by one person alone. So we want to advocate for additional resources and support to empower members, to empower performers to take care of their mental health. Now let's begin with our speakers. They're peppered around, but what I'll do is I'll introduce each speaker and invite them to speak for up to 10 minutes, roughly 10 minutes, sharing their findings, sharing their views, and sharing their experience. Our first speaker is Mary Lane. Mary is branch secretary for the West of England Variety Branch and an Equity Variety counsellor. And a motion from Mary's branch to the 2021 Special Representatives Conference called upon the union to engage in further work to support members' mental health, and was a key catalyst for several new pieces of work, including this morning's event. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you very much, Abby. Before I go any further, I'd like to say that you've done me the power of good just seeing you today after so many years, Abby. Thank you so much for what you're doing. And I just want to say, I don't think there's a single person on the screen right now who would not agree that this is long overdue. It's way, way, way overdue. I was in London yesterday at a meeting of an organisation I belong to. And ironically, I had a young lady come up to me who spoke precisely about the fact that she'd only just got back to performing because she'd lost her confidence. She lost her confidence through an incident that happened to her, which was nothing to do with the entertainment business, but it caused her to feel that she didn't want to do it anymore. She's just come back to it now in the last couple of months, but it just goes to show how tenuous these feelings are and how vulnerable.
So why isn't the
our
speaker
thoughts are.
broken?
Sorry, I got distracted then. Christine, can you mute yourself?
There's the speaker thing and it's on
Christine, can you mute
100%.
yourself? Christine, can you mute
Oh.
yourself, please?
It's-
Or perhaps somebody can mute
Mary Lane needs to mute themselves, please.
Well, I'm actually speaking, so I
She's
can't.
muted now.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm so sorry.
So anyway, I'd like to thank everybody for being here, but I just want to say it's also pointless trotting out the two words mental health if people don't understand what those two words mean, which is behind the motion and the thinking behind our motion, because I'm thrilled to say that in a number of discussions with Ian, he has told us that he's going to be looking at doing seminars containing resources which the branches will be able to access. So we are looking at sharing and raising awareness amongst the branches on mental health, which is so, so important, because the more people that know about it, the more people can help and support each other. And again, it's the loneliness element of it that we find so common. And I'm going to say, our branch says a number of reasons why members find themselves struggling. And that's in itself a minefield. They feel a sense of responsibility to others to make lives better, but sometimes in trying to ensure that, they sacrifice their own well-being. And I'm talking here specifically, Juliet, about comics and comedians who feel a sense of, who feel a sense of responsibility to making other people laugh, right? And if they don't make other people laugh, it makes them feel worse themselves. You know, so it's like one of those speech bubbles, isn't it? It's a speech bubble that has arrows coming out of it everywhere, and the further you go with it, the wider the spectrum actually goes. So I thought that point was very, very important to make. Thank you, sweetheart. Okay, and it's a natural position to take to help other people, but some find that more difficult than others, which in turn will create anxiety in itself. It says, I think what I'm trying to say is that no matter which way you turn, you'll always come across a situation that could change someone's state of mind. There is fragility in our members, not necessarily present in other areas of employment. There's a greater expectation, and failing to do that makes the development of depression and low self-esteem that much more likely. I've got loads of friends who are comics who feel that if they haven't done a good show, they're going to feel bad, and they feel bad, then they take a responsibility to other people feeling bad because they didn't think they were any good. And that in itself expands as well. That just goes out there. Okay. I also, and this is where I'm personally involved here, and also Cliff, had the honor of having a son with special needs who had autism, who passed away 19 years ago. I mention him because for all that time, I had to try and find a way to make his life as normal and fulfilled as I possibly could. And therein lies another completely debatable subject. How do you support those who need extra help? How is the next thing, whether they've been born with mental impairment and lived their lives with it, or whether they've developed issues in later years, which would require a completely different approach. All of these things, in my view, have to be taken into account, and that involves making as many people aware as possible, which is why I am absolutely thrilled that we're doing this today and having an awareness within equity that was hitherto not present at this level.
I just add something. I'd like to add that having Matthew as a son really helped us to understand. He taught us a lot about disability and understanding disabilities, and through observing him and being with him 24 hours a day, we learnt an awful lot about mental issues as well, and how to recognize them, which, being the type of persons we are, all of us now, being the type of people we are, actors, entertainers, we all have a knack of covering things up very, very well.
Oh, yeah.
But I find that having had Matthew, and I think Mary could probably say the same, we can see through those cover-ups, and we tend to say to people, what's wrong, you know, what's wrong? And I think that's a lesson that we could all learn. Sorry.
No, that's all right, because I know we're limited for time, but I've more or less said really what I wanted to say, other than the fact that I couldn't be more proud to be an Equity member right now. And I couldn't be more grateful to Equity for raising this awareness, because between us, with all the wonderful people we've got here from BAPAM and Juliet, a performer herself, you know, and also we have the support from the Duchess of Cambridge, I understand now, who's just become president of the Maternal Mental Health Alliance. You know, therein lies another tale. You know, you've got this whole spectrum. Our emotion came out of watching a speaker at the SRC last year in tears. And we couldn't stand it. It broke my heart to see her. And we went over to her and we spoke to her, and I said to her, I said, look, I said, whatever the outcome of what's happening to you, thank you for being brave and sharing this. I said, because by sharing it, you've made a difference. And it's that sharing part that to me is the most important, because I know that not everybody can. So we've got to try and help with that area of it as well. And I think that's really all I want to say, because I know we've got some wonderful speakers that following me. So thank you for listening, and thank you for your time, and thank you for coming today.
Thank all of you for coming.
Thank you so much, Mary. And thank you, Cliff, for sharing your stories and sharing the stories of many people. I think you've touched on something extremely important, many extremely important things. In the need to perform, being performers by nature, feeling that we have to perform in circumstances, even though we may not have the energy or capacity to do so because of the things that we've experienced, and also recognizing when things are not okay and not seeing the acknowledgement of that as a weakness. In fact, seeing it as a strength, because it can begin the process to seek out support, and the importance of doing that for ourselves and others, and not seeing that as a sacrifice if we have to prioritize ourselves, which we have to do in order to help others. So thank you both so much. We're going to next hear about some of the key findings and recommendations from a lot of the research that's been done, specifically undertaken by the Royal College of Music. And next we're going to hear from Professor Erin Williamon, who is Professor of Performance Science at the Royal College of Music, where he directs the Centre for Performance Science. His research focuses on skilled performance and applied scientific initiatives that inform music learning and teaching, as well as the impact of music and the arts on society. Thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you very much. I'm really delighted to be here, and it's an honor to be able to speak with you today and to hear the other speakers as well. If there's any problems with my connection, I apologize. Just make some noise and I'll try to pick that up. I'll be sharing some slides in just a moment, and I would be happy as well to make those slides available to anyone who would like to have them. So my name is Erin Williamon. I'm based at the Royal College of Music, and I direct the Centre for Performance Science. The CPS is a partnership of the Royal College of Music and Imperial College, and our home base at Imperial is the Faculty of Medicine. Over the past few years, I've been running a project that's funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council called HEARTS, that stands for the Health, Economic, and Social Impact of the Arts. And it's very clear from our findings, we have many publications who support this, that the arts are a real resource for health and well-being within the public. The arts make a huge difference to public health. And we see that people who are engaged in the arts, despite their socioeconomic status, their age, people who have the opportunity to engage with the arts generally have ways of combating depression and anxiety. They're less lonely, they're more socially connected. Now, we've run this project for a number of years, and when the pandemic started, we approached the Research Council to focus in specifically on arts professionals and the impact that the pandemic has been having on people who are working within the arts. So this latest strand of our research asks the following questions. So what is the ongoing impact of COVID-19 on arts professionals' health, well-being, and livelihoods? How have different arts professionals experienced, perceived, and responded to the changing situation due to COVID-19? And finally, in what ways has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted on our use of technologies to create, consume, and engage with the arts? And what are the implications of this for the future? So the way that we've tried to address these questions is to do large-scale surveys with artists themselves and with the public. So we are currently working on publications with 10,000 people in the UK, looking at how they've been engaging with the arts over the pandemic, a nationally representative sample. And we've also been looking at arts professionals and the ways in which they also have been so mainly survey-based work, but we're also doing some interview studies. We will be creating some short films summarizing our findings, and we we've called it rapid prototyping of some new technologies that seem to be needed in the moment. So we have a strong technological edge to the project too. So within this project, we have, as it's part of UK Research and Innovation's COVID-19 emergency funding, we were able to present some of our results to the DCMS, the Department for Digital, Culture, Media, and Sport. And what I wanted to focus on in that presentation to them are the policy recommendations, the areas that we need to develop in order to make a difference in moving forward. So that's what I would present to you today. So I'll summarize all of our results into 3 areas, and I'll just highlight some of the policy recommendations that we have made to the DCMS, and we would like to keep making the case there. So the first area for our results are around reformed funding models. So we see that among the arts professionals that we've surveyed, in the performing arts and otherwise, we see that 57% of those that we've surveyed are in dire financial hardship directly as a result of the pandemic. What's a little more worrying is that 70% of those working in the arts see a future only alongside non-arts work. Moreover, we see a real hemorrhaging out of the arts from early career artists. And of course, as we'll know, within the performing arts, we see different impacts across different industries. So the performing arts have been particularly hurt because we haven't been able to perform in social context. So I put here a quote from one of our participants. This is just one of many, who said, "It's been a disaster, an utter disaster. My industry disappeared overnight. Myself and my husband had 2 projects lined up. He had literally just started rehearsing his, all gone. All my freelance work gone. This will set us back at least £50,000. Now this happened, and we saw this at the very beginning of the pandemic. So you can imagine that's the initial hit, and that's just been piling on since then. So the recommendations that we highlighted to DCMS included looking at models internationally for basic guaranteed income for artists. We see examples in France as well as a new project that's being piloted in New York, looking at a guaranteed income for artists and performing artists in particular. We'd like to see minimum pay protections for creators. And I think in this respect, equity has really shown through and done a really tremendous job. And finally, we have also highlighted the need for targeted tax relief and flexible funding models. So targeted tax relief similar to that which we've seen unveiled in Ireland lately. So you can read more through our publications, and if you want copies of these slides, I'd be happy to let you have them. But the publication in particular that I'm thinking about is listed just at the bottom of this slide. So that's our first area recommendation set number one. Number two, we were looking at arts in health. So among the public, and these are very large scale surveys that we've run, 74% of the public, of those people who engaged in the arts during the pandemic, they reported feeling more connected to other people. So at a point where people are isolated, the arts gives people that resource to connect to others. Unfortunately, we saw in our findings that those artists that we surveyed, 73% were reporting depressive symptoms and 53% were reporting increased loneliness. So in any other field, in any other profession, this would be seen as an absolute catastrophe, and we'd be tackling it head on straight away. So, we need to keep pushing our case here. What's been very nice in terms of our findings is that we've seen a shift in the priorities for social responsible practice as part of individuals' artistic identities. So I list a quote here from one of our participants who said, "It's my job not of how can I be the best director or production manager, but rather I have a community in pain. What can I do to serve my community right now?" And we've really actually through our research seen excellent practice of artists who are engaging more and more people in health contexts and community contexts and taking that sort of social responsible practice out and doing more of it. So our recommendations in this regard are looking at social prescribing to create valued workforce opportunities, and that is increasing social prescribing. We also suggested investing in creative education. So for those artists, those performing artists in particular who want to work in community and health context, the conservatoires, the art schools, the acting and drama schools, we could do more in terms of enhancing the way that we prepare them for working in those sectors. And then finally, we feel that we need to fund more creative health research in order to support artists in diverse communities. And by more creative health research, we need to be able to pinpoint the areas where we're having the most impact. Okay, and finally, the third area in which I'd like to highlight is just the hybrid technological and virtual environments. So 78% of those in the public that we surveyed intend to maintain or increase their use of technology to engage with the arts once the pandemic settles down. Unfortunately, they don't want to spend any more money. 56% intend to spend less money on engaging with the arts after the pandemic. And I can tell you, we collected these data before the current cost of living crisis. So you could imagine the situation getting even worse. We did find in our research that many arts professionals don't feel confident in using online technologies. So in terms of recommendations, we were proposing to GCMS of looking at ways of upskilling arts workers in digital modes of delivery. We need to look carefully at clearer fair pay and online creative content protections. Think about streaming for musicians and so on. And I think we also need to consider ways of preserving hybrid models of working within the arts and engaging with the arts. And this can give us a vehicle in which we can promote the arts in a sustainable way and also reach communities who may not be able normally to get out and engage with the arts where they're actually happening. So we do have some possibility for opportunities here. So, of course, I'm obliged to list all of my grant reference numbers and all the wonderful funding that the Arts and Humanities Research Council has given us. I have some websites here if you wish to read more. And if you are interested, we have some videos of summarizing our research on a YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/healthyconservatoires. My email address is here. I would be happy to have an email correspondence with anyone who would like to have more information or with questions, or indeed if you have a direct in to policymakers or want to do work on the policy front, please do get in contact. So thank you very much, and I'll hand back over.
Thank you so much, Professor. It's so encouraging to see the wealth of research that's been conducted, and especially in a world where a lot of policy requires this, evidence-backed research. At the same time, hearing these individual stories is so visceral, and I imagine for many people extremely relatable on such a direct level. And it's so, I don't know if interesting is the word, but it's really food for thought that for a field, arts, creativity, that brings so much warmth and joy and has provided so much connection, those actually engaging in the work are twice as more likely to experience depression, according to one of these studies. So conversations like this and work like this is so paramount in closing that gap, rounding out that circle, such that people engaging in the work can feel the benefits of people experiencing it too. So thank you so much for sharing your research. Now we're going to hear from Dr. Lucy Clements, our third speaker. Dr. Lucy is a practicing dance psychologist and uses her research expertise to support world-leading dance institutions in developing psychoeducational workshops and consulting for performing artists. Dr. Lucy's research examines the role of the training environment, teachers, parents, and peers in nurturing healthy dance engagement, and the role of psychology in helping artists achieve technical and creative excellence. And this is a really exciting talk as it relates to how we're bringing people into these fields and how we're training the creators and artists of the future. A warm welcome to Dr. Lucy.
Thank you very much. And first of all, I'd just like to say hello and thank you to Equity, particularly just for inviting me to author the research that was published today. I left academia about a year ago, and the reason that I left academia was a frustration about the way that we pump out quite a lot of research and often it doesn't reach the end user. It doesn't actually inform practice, lead to any particular change. And I left with a really clear goal of making sure that the knowledge that I held as a psychologist and as an academic and a researcher was reaching those that needed it most. So a huge, huge thank you to Equity for offering me the opportunity to do that and acting on those findings and that research. Today, I'm actually just going to share with you a very short talk about mental health, as it's Mental Health Awareness Week. What Equity have asked me to do is to hopefully raise your mental health awareness by helping you to explain from a psychological point of view what mental health is and how to recognise signs of declining or poor mental health in yourself or colleagues that you're working with. I'm also going to use a PowerPoint, and I'm more than happy to share this. I can definitely send the link over afterwards. There's lots of information in the PowerPoint that I'm not going to have time to cover. So you're very welcome to look through and take from it what you'd like to. Okay, so should be able to see now. Okay, so I'm going to share with you just a very quick whistle-stop tour around what mental health is from the perspective of an academic psychologist. And this is really important because lots of academic studies have shown that although the general public and population is really invested in mental health, and although we seem to put it at the forefront of what we want to talk about, we actually see really low levels of what's called mental health literacy. So this is people's understanding actually of what that means, of how to recognize it and how to act and what to do with that information. So hopefully today in my 10 minutes, I'll be able to slightly improve your mental health literacy. And that really starts from a point of view of talking about what mental health is. And when we talk about mental health, we often think that this means something negative. And when I started the review, I spoke with Ian and Liam quite a bit about what do you mean by mental health. So the definition of mental health, if we think about this from a health perspective, health means the presence of good things, the presence of well-being. And mental health is actually defined in the same way, that mental health is about the presence of emotional and spiritual resilience, which allows us to enjoy life, survive pain, disappointment and sadness. So when we talk about mental health, it's actually about a positive sense of well-being, and that relates to how we view ourselves and other. So when we talk about mental health, actually what it exists like, or what it looks like, is something that's on a continuum from mental illness through to mental well-being. Because mental health is quite stigmatized, what we tend to do, and because we kind of operate on a medical model, what we tend to do is think about people as belonging in a category of being mentally well or mentally disordered. So if we have the diagnosis of a mental disorder, we might think, well, those people exist in a different category. But actually within psychology, what we tend to do is look at this as existing on a continuum. So in any given day, each of us is moving up and down that continuum. So it's not necessarily a sort of permanent state that we're in. And what this allows us to do is recognize that someone living with a mental health diagnosis might also have moments in their life where they experience good mental well-being as well. And that idea can help us to move away from stigmatizing mental disorder. So good mental health, or the presence of mental health, enables us to cope with day-to-day life. It helps us to think, feel and act in a way that's typical of us, to recognise the good in ourselves. And that's important for us in our industry, that we're able to recognise what's good about us as a unique individual, and also respect the achievements that we've had. Importantly for us as well, as we're expressing a range of emotions, mental health also enables us to do that, to engage with that whole spectrum of emotions. It helps us to live and work productively and cope with the daily stresses of life. So these are those really small niggles, like perhaps we go to the supermarket and we went to buy milk and then we're halfway home and realised that we didn't actually buy the thing we intended to, but all the other things that we got distracted by. So mental health enables us to deal with those low-level stresses and deal with change and uncertainty. And it also really helps us to look to the future with a sense of optimism. So look at what's coming for us in the future with a feeling of excitement or enthusiasm, and reflect on the past with a sense of ease. So for us, what it's really valuable to do is to be able to see what is good mental health and use that as a baseline for understanding when we're moving away from that good mental health. So we recognise that someone's mental health is starting to decline when they're shifting away from the symptoms of good mental health. And this is a really productive way of looking at it. When is someone moving away from that mental well-being that's allowing coping on a day-to-day basis? And those warning signs are typically clustered within 4 categories. The first one is people's feelings. So they might start to feel reduced self-worth, sadness, or the opposite. So periods of really high intense mood, maybe quite unpredictable emotions that are changing, or very numb emotions at any one time. If someone's experiencing anxiety, they might also be having lots of symptoms of fear and panic. But the key thing is that you can't really understand the link between how you're feeling and what's going on. So these periods of emotional change might not even seem to have any kind of clear cause for you. Another warning sign is how we think. So when we are experiencing a slight decline in our mental health, it can be because we are experiencing things like distracted thoughts, difficulty concentrating. This is a really key one for people, maybe difficulty in making decisions. But we can also have speeded up thinking. So really fast, erratic thinking, maybe lots and lots of ideas, but not being able to follow through on them. At the more extreme end of it, we might then also have things like thoughts of suicide, or concern about other people's intentions or actions. In addition, this is all going to impact on behaviour. So we know that thoughts and feelings also impact on behaviour. So one of the clearest signs of declining mental health is a key change in how someone's behaving, particularly how they're behaving in terms of their relationship with work. So it might look like poor motivation, and it's actually really easy to think that someone who is experiencing a decline in their mental health is simply lazy. One of the clearest signs is perhaps laziness, someone who's late for work, someone who's not turning up on time, someone who's not focused or paying attention. And it can also lead to changes like being quite socially withdrawn as well, so not engaging with activities that we used to like before. Physically as well, mental health will really heavily impact us. So things like fatigue and lethargy, or with anxiety, symptoms like palpitations, difficulty breathing, those physical symptoms of panic are key. I'm also just going to focus for a moment on stress, because although stress is not a medical diagnosis and is not necessarily a mental health problem per se, stress or prolonged periods of chronic stress can lead to a diagnosis of depression or anxiety. So if you go to your doctor and discuss that you are feeling stressed, one would hope they would intervene quite early, because we know that can prevent a longer term mental health diagnosis. And stress is around having an adverse reaction to the types of demands or pressures being put on other people. So it's quite literally that feeling that the to-do list is piling up and we don't have the resources to cope with it. So you can look at this as being like an imbalance between the demands on our plate and the resources that we've got, whether those resources are time, whether those resources are the skills, whether those resources are not enough time to look after ourselves. Again, very similar symptoms of stress, but very importantly, stress impacts physiologically very, very clearly. So actually stress, when you look at NHS data, is the biggest cost to the NHS. So stress-related health concerns are the biggest cost for the NHS. They lead to things like heart disease, lots of kind of blood pressure related problems, but also eating related problems too. Really importantly, we can identify someone's stress levels because we often tend to manage stress through compensatory behaviours. So things like increased drinking, maybe gambling, risk taking, smoking and drug use. And actually this is where seeking help for stress is really important, because if we get the right coping mechanisms in place, actually we can reduce stress. These are attempts at coping that aren't quite effective. So just to end, what can you do as someone who is invested in supporting mental health? If a colleague, peer, family member comes to you to discuss their mental health, show your support. One of the best questions that you can ask is, what do you need from me? What can I offer to you? And that's a really important starting question, just to allow that person to feel that you're listening and that you're there to support them. Show them trust and respect, be patient with them, and very importantly, look after yourself. So we know that anyone who works in any sort of caring domain or works with people or lives with people has family members who struggle with their mental health. That can have a significant impact on your own. So always make sure you're looking after yourself. And importantly, don't feel like you have to have all the answers. My most important piece of advice to you as well, if anyone comes to you to discuss their mental health, is that you follow up, that that person doesn't just feel like it was a one-off conversation that's been and gone, has been swept under the carpet, but that there's some sort of follow-up, continued support, continued investment in that. And then for you, if you are experiencing challenges with your mental health, it's very clear to say that general lifestyle changes are the root kind of way of starting. So things like self-care techniques, and I could spend forever going through what those are, but it doesn't just mean lighting a candle, having a bath, but actually really committing to a good, healthy lifestyle. Treatment, of course, through the NHS. The most common sources of treatment that they will offer is a talking treatment or perhaps a psychiatric medication. And just knowing that recovery is a journey, it's not always going to be straightforward. Many people go to the NHS and actually have a very difficult experience. The NHS initial kind of response rates are not overly positive. And actually one of the things that comes through in the report that I've written is the importance of seeking a talking therapy or talking treatment from someone who understands the industry. But if you're struggling to find that access, I think we can't undervalue the work of the NHS. It's a really good starting place. And as Aaron mentioned, community support, working with other people, having those opportunities to share and work together with people who've had similar mental health experiences. Just finally, because it's important to raise awareness of what help is out there, 3 really important charities. The Samaritans we know quite a lot about. Shout, which is a text service. If you're working with young people, this I think is a very, very valuable resource. It's a text service where you can have a text conversation. This is really useful, particularly for people who are in moments of heightened panic or anxiety. You'll have that text conversation with an individual until the person is soothed. And also Calm, which specifically works with people experiencing suicidal ideation. On top of this, we've also got some amazing industry-specific resources. BAPAM and Claire will speak to you more about that. But I also just wanted to point you towards some people that I recommend on a personal level that I've also worked with. Applause for Thought, Playing Sane, and Counselling for Dancers, who are all doing amazing work in this area. And a very, very new organisation called Wellbeing in the Arts, who are working with theatres and organisations to implement and improve access to counselling. So a very whistle-stop tour, just a quick thank you, and I hope that's improved or given you some sort of awareness about mental health.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lucy. Forgive me for mixing up your work and your talk. A lot of your work has focused on material for people coming into this field, but your talk has been something for us all. Thank you so much. I took a number of screenshots, and I hope that I call on everyone to get in touch with our speakers for those slides and for that information. On to speaking for some of her resources. Next will be Juliet Burton, who will be sharing her own experiences of mental health and sharing strategies for our members to positively manage your own mental health. Juliet is a comedian, writer, and mental health advocate, and is ambassador for the mental health charity Rethink Mental Illness, works closely with Mind, Beat, and Time to Change, and is at the vanguard of performers incorporating these issues into their work for mainstream audiences. Thank you so much, Juliet.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and it's a real honour to be here today. Just to give you a heads up, I am a comedian, so I will pepper a couple of jokes in this talk. So if you're at home, you're on mute, feel free to laugh. I don't hear you. Just enjoy it for yourself. Enjoy your own laughter, the sound of your own laughter. As you can probably tell from my accent, yes, I do have mental health conditions. I've been diagnosed with 14 now different mental health conditions. I've been sectioned under the Mental Health Act. I've been an inpatient in hospital for mental illness 5 times, and I've been in therapy for over 20 years. I'm what psychiatrists might call a bit much. Now, we do all have mental health, just like we all have physical health. My list of labels, which I will regale to you now, include anorexia, anxiety disorder, bipolar disorder, body dysmorphic disorder, bulimia, compulsive overeating disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, which for the most observant of you is the reason why this list is organised alphabetically. Let's break free from that though. I've also been diagnosed with depression. I've had experience of hallucinations, both audible and visual. I've most recently been diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is like the roots of the tree of the rest of my mental health conditions. And most recently, I've been diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder, which is something that I think is prevalent within, it's not prevalent as a diagnosis, but it's something that I think we can all, as actors and artists, can understand the idea of dissociating into different identities. It's what we use as a tool in our industry. I also, yes, I mentioned that I did have experience of hallucinations, so I've got no idea whether this is happening right now or not, so I'm enjoying it though, so that's good. I was sectioned under the Mental Health Act when I was 17. And I spent my 18th birthday sectioned under the Mental Health Act in a psychiatric ward, although some people spend their 18th birthday drunk under a table in Wetherspoons, and I think I actually had the better venue. So I was sectioned, and I did receive a birthday card that said, "It's your 18th birthday, let's go crazy." And I was like, I'm way ahead of you, mate. I have also been a size 4 due to anorexia and a UK size 20 due to binge eating disorder, and I went from one to the other in 6 months. My boundaries have expanded and contracted more times than the British Empire boundaries, and just like the British Empire, me and my eating disorders are working through a lot of shame and guilt. So that's a few jokes, and now let me talk to you about what we're really here to discuss. This amazing research, this study that's been done, and the combination of different studies that Equity have brought together. I read that it said that in 2 academic papers showed that depression is twice as likely in performers than in the general population, and 6% of the general public experience anxiety, but it's 24% of dancers, 32% in opera singers, 60% in actors, 90% of rock musicians. They didn't list comedians. And I have a theory. I think it's because we all know it's 100% of us, all of us. I mean, come on, it's obvious. In fact, my career started going incredibly well back in the same year that Robin Williams sadly took his own life. I've toured the UK and Australia, New Zealand. I've got Arts Council grants, multiple Arts Council grants for research and development of my shows, and for my tours as well. And I've had wonderful success prior to the pandemic. And as has already been touched upon, the pandemic completely took all of that away. I'm going to briefly talk about some of the things, because I feel honoured to be speaking to you guys right now, because as Equity members, I think you're ready for the thoughts that I'm currently trying to process myself and put out there into the wider world. And especially in Mental Health Awareness Week, there are many other virtual gigs and in real life gigs that I'm doing where I'm not sure, I'm trying to assess, I don't know whether people are ready for this kind of discussion. I feel that there's been a massive problem in opportunism. We've had such an appetite for talking about mental health awareness, and it's become commercialized and capitalized. It's become this thing where there's poster children, and I think I became a poster child for a while. For disability, there's inspiration porn, you know, the idea of it to look at somebody else and say, thank goodness it's not me, how wonderful, how inspiring they are. And I'm so fed up of being called inspiring, because that's exacerbating the problem. That's making it a them versus us. As has already been explained by Dr. Lucy, we all have mental health, just like we all have physical health. And we all have a body, just like some of us might have a physical health condition that means we are classified as disabled. Some of us might have a mental health condition that lasts long enough to classify us as disabled. But the problem we've been exacerbating recently is problem admiring, not problem solving. So we've had poster children for mental health awareness, and we've been, I was a part of it. I was a part of the problem, I believe. I toured around the world with wonderful experiences, incredible times, but I was so lonely on those tours. I was searching for connection. I was struggling with alcoholism on those tours as well. I was also struggling with bulimia on those tours, and yet nobody knew. I hid it all, and I hid behind this narrative fit for public consumption. I was telling people a story about my mental health journey that was a narrative fit for public consumption, and it distanced me from feeling and experiencing the visceral memories of those traumas, not just being sectioned, but my childhood traumas. And I was trying to push all of that away, and it became this this inertia of energy, because there is this appetite. And I think it's important, especially with the pandemic, to be aware that if you don't have stability within oneself, if you don't have internal stability, then having a life which is so unstable like we do in the arts, it's going to be it can become a perfect storm. And my internal instability also is linked with my internal sensitivity, which drew me to the arts. But there's no consistency, there's no income, there's no consistent income, no consistency with our timetables. There's a pressure to look a certain way. There's a pressure to use social media to hustle and get fans, and to get fans to buy tickets to shows, and it's all put on the artist. There's a pressure to use social media so much that we will have boundary issues. And during the pandemic, I had people messaging me, telling me that they were going to take their own life, and I was reliant on my relationships with good charities like Mind, Rethink Mental Illness, to get their advice on how to use healthy boundaries to help support these people. Again, like Dr. Lucy said, to make sure that I was putting in place the fact that I am not the right person to help them with this. I'm not a trained therapist, and here's some resources to go and use, and please let me know how you get on. That was the best template I could use. But this boundary issues with social media and the arts is a problem, because we're constantly searching as artists for a mirror self. And it's intensified when you have a fragmented sense of self, which a lot of artists will have. And we are drawn to the arts usually either because of family trends towards the arts, therefore potentially inherited trauma, or to help heal society and self through using our trauma, like Mary mentioned earlier. You know, we are absolutely drawn to I know I'm drawn to the arts because I felt so incredibly lonely growing up, and I was terrified for my own life, for a pervasive ongoing experience. So drawing to the arts to try to find a sense of community and connection. Talking about a problem doesn't solve the problem. It's like when you have a fire and you're talking about fire safety, but what you really need is a fire brigade. You know, if your house catches fire, it's not really a comfort knowing that there's no funding for fire trucks, but so none will be coming. But walkers are going to do it. # talk about fire Mondays, # flame goals. It doesn't help. It doesn't help move the story forward. It doesn't help us as a society move forward, which is why this talk is incredible, that we're actually going to put something out there for equity members to actually have help and to make the changes they need to make. During the pandemic, my brain broke massively, and I hurt people that I loved, because I had my complex post-traumatic stress disorder, meaning that my trauma responses were taking complete hold, and my DID, my dissociative identity disorder, meant that I went into a persona that was really harmful and hurtful, and went against my character values and judgments. That's not an excuse. It was something that I didn't realize was occurring. I lost all of my income due to the pandemic. I lost my relationships, and there was no stability. And I realized that I needed to do deeper work, because without a forest fire, you're never going to get the regrowth. So although that it was an awful time during the pandemic, it did help me do this deeper work on myself. I took a social media break, and I realized that going to therapy isn't doing therapy. And acting has helped me strengthen my sense of self, because it's an interesting experience to draw a boundary between where does the character end and where do I begin. I did ask myself the question, do I want to carry on doing comedy though? Because jokes do break tension, and they reassure, and there's no pity. They unite us in shared laughter, but it distances us from the visceral experiences. And I realized that I wanted to communicate, but with myself. I then wanted to communicate and connect with others and find community, like I'd been searching around the world on tours for that sense of community. And now I'm doing a full-time job and a part-time job in a social enterprise cafe. We're building a venue there to mean that as soon as I stopped and breathed for a while, that sense of community and connection is coming to me. I'm attracting it. I'm not chasing it. I'm attracting it. I also asked myself, do I want to carry on writing and performing comedy? And the answer was yes. Because yes, we've had a lot of grief over the last couple of years, loss of life, relationships, income, and value. How are we valued in society within the arts? We weren't valued. I didn't feel valued at all, because all my friends were on furlough, and I was just losing all my income. But I realized I wanted to create, I wanted to help people, I wanted to do this work on myself, and then maybe give other people the opportunity to do the work on themselves by doing a show that has a new show called No Brainer, and it's all about my trauma healing. It was meant to be about how to find hope when things seem hopeless, but instead I've turned it into how our brains work. And I worry that might be too progressive for society right now, but I know it's not too progressive for you guys, for equity, because we use our own traumas all the time in our experiences on stage. And I realized, to sum this up, that up till now, I think we've all been talking about hope. We hope that things will get better. There's an awareness. We're too aware about mental health now, and we hope that things will get better, but hope doesn't change anything. Hope doesn't change anything, but action does. That's why he's called Action Man and not Hope Man. You know, we watch action movies, not hope movies. Nobody wants to spend 2 hours watching Bruce Willis hiding in a vent, hoping that the terrorists go away. We need to put action in. And that's what this incredible talk is doing. This is what equity is doing, and I'm so honoured to even be a small part of it. And I'm very, very grateful for this. I will end on a joke, because you guys need to look after yourselves, and laughter can help us look after ourselves. My favourite bit of advice that my therapist has ever given me was, you've got to show yourself some self-love. So I quickly pulled up my trousers and realised that wasn't what she meant. Thank you so much for having me. I feel honoured.
Thank you so much, Juliet. I'm just getting that. Lovely, brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing your story so openly, and not only, and within that, sharing ways that we can get ourselves to move forward, asking those questions. What do I need? How can I serve myself? How can I serve others? As well as this event and the charter that Equity have produced, which outline key things that need to be done, such like improving our work-life balance, improving our pay, providing safeguards. So it's not just about how to get work, but it's about how to maintain your mental health when you are in work as well, because of things like those traumas that you can experience creating work and being involved with work, and catering for marginalized groups and young people, and finally investing in our mental health services. And one service that we do have as Equity members, not only for when we're experiencing mental health conditions or mental health issues in work, but outside of work, is BAPAM. And I'm delighted to introduce our last speaker for this event, Claire Cordeaux, who is CEO of BAPAM, which is also the British Association for Performing Arts Medicine. And Claire is going to speak to the vital role that BAPAM play in supporting mental health for creative professionals. Thank you so much, Claire.
Thank you so much, and I'm very honoured to be on such a fantastic panel, and Juliet, that was inspiring, and everybody was inspiring. So, and also congratulations to Equity on this charter, really much needed and fantastic news today. BAPAM, as Abiola has said, is a charity which delivers specialist healthcare to performing artists across the UK. We're very lucky to be that it's funded by the industry largely. We have probably over 2,000 patient inquiries. That's gone up again. That was last year. It's going up all the time. And we've got 250 specialist clinicians who, as Lucy said, have experience in looking after and understanding the performing arts, as well as being clinically qualified in their area of specialty. And we also do a lot of training in self-care, health education. So our mission really is to provide those expert health and wellbeing services in the performing arts across the UK. We offer free clinical consultations with those experts. We also liaise for care with the NHS and independent providers, sometimes with funding from benevolent funds where that can be obtained, to make sure that there's a good comprehensive care pathway to meet the needs of the people that come to see us. And we offer these free training and resources to support performers' health. So I'm just going to add to what's already been said about the bad news is that the population has a health problem. 70 to 80% of people will have a health problem relating to their occupation, and very significant numbers of that are in mental health. And there are a number of surveys there. That was before COVID. We don't have the totally up-to-date numbers now, but I can tell you what's happened, certainly in BAPAM since COVID hit. So 73%, this is from the Arts Mind survey, experienced a mental health problem, and a proportion of those had been stopped from working as a result. And again, that was before COVID. And I just want to say something about the risk, because I think what Equity is doing with the Charter is so important. There's no one reason for this. There's a whole collection of reasons that causes the problem, from who I am, who we all are individually, with all of our own characteristics which might predispose us to a health problem, to then the exposure to external risk factors within the culture of the performing arts environment and the environment that we're working with. And very often a problem will manifest itself because with that predisposition, there's some sort of inciting event, which could be a new repertoire, a new show. And of course, the pandemic was absolutely that. It took away everybody's work, it took away purpose, it took away all of the things that kind of made people who they are. And so I'm not surprised that we've seen this increase in mental health issues. It is in line with the rest of the population, but given where the performing arts came from in terms of that high level of mental health issues in the first place, then that is a very significant increase, and it does mean that it's hit us very, very badly. And if we don't address those health problems quickly and with the right care, then the health outcome can be worse. So it's a complex picture. And I think what's so good about what Equity's looking at today is trying to pick out whose responsibility it is. So yes, it is all of our responsibility to try and be healthy, to try and practice self-care, to try and do all of those things. But also there is a responsibility on the performance environment, whether we're freelancers or employed, to try and help us as performers, as people working in the industry, to be our best selves, to have our best health, and not to get in the way of that. So if I have a routine that keeps me healthy, and I can't practice that in my performance environment, then that's difficult. But I think there are small shifts that can be made, and I certainly think that the Charter is going to help us with that. So getting on to mental health problems, and Lucy's talked a lot about this, and one of the things that I think is very encouraging is that the evidence says that if you have an early intervention, and that might be the talking therapies that Lucy was talking about, actually 50% of people get better after that and don't need another intervention. So that's really good news. And of course, in our industry, performance anxiety is probably something that routinely other sectors don't necessarily experience. But for some people, it can be a lifelong condition, and you do need ongoing support. And there is also a big association with physical problems. For the people that come to see us, about 13% of those tend to be very complex. So it's a spectrum, and you can move in and around that spectrum over your life. Our service is very honoured and privileged to offer therapy services to performing artists. And we have a contract with Equity, which enables people to access counselling, also with Help Musicians for Musicians, and also with the Dance Professionals Fund. And what that enables us to do is to contract with therapists to provide support, but we also have a clinical lead in mental health, so that if people do need to be transferred to the NHS, to specialist services, we can help with that transition. What we're finding is there is a really high demand now. Before COVID, about 15% of people that called us had a mental health problem. That's now 37% from looking at the last numbers. And you can see when I did these slides, it was in February. I've updated that, it's now 37%. So we're going up. Again, we're about 13% of acute complex patients needing liaison with the NHS. So that demand is going up, and I think that is very significant. It's also worrying. and it's good, it's fantastic that Equity is able to support that. When people come to us, what happens is we will do an initial assessment with them, which will be something like 45 minutes to an hour, with a psychologist or a GP with a specialist mental health background, to work out what's going on, to look at the whole person, to look at their history, what's happened, how did they get to how they are today, and also to work out what sort of therapy would be most helpful, or if a fast track to the NHS is needed. And then we'll match to a therapist. We're very lucky to be working with multiple therapists with different modalities, different backgrounds, different performing arts experience. And also for us, what's very important is managing risk. Anybody that comes to us may experience higher risk at any point that they're with us, and so understanding how to deal with that is very important. We do measure some of the outcomes. We ask people to do a depression and anxiety score before and after the intervention they've had with us. And so you can see the blue is the before, and this is the depression score. It's just a series of questions that we ask. And you can see that actually after just a short intervention, we're starting to see some really good results for most people. And then this is the depression score. And you can see the same sort of thing. So it's amazing that we're able to offer this. It's really entirely due to the industry that we can provide it. We're also have been able to offer traineeships for people from Black, Asian, minority, ethnic background. Therapists very often are female and white, which isn't always going to meet the needs of people who come to us. So we've been trying to address that by offering some placements with BAPAM and access to training, supported by Help Musicians, Sony, PPL, and so that means that we can start to offer a greater diversity, and I think that's going to be helpful for the industry going forward. We also offer health education, and Lucy, I think you've been part of that, which has been fantastic. We have about 4,000 attendees a year, and these are all free. They include mental health, keeping mentally well, but they also include partnership webinars with other organisations in the sector. We have peer support with our drop-in, which is called Maintaining Your Healthy Career, where you can get that peer support to help you maintain your health goals. We know it's all very well knowing what to do, but actually doing it is very often another question. So these are aimed at helping you to develop those health goals and maintain them. We can provide one-to-one mentorship, and there's lots of resources. We have a healthy practice checklist and diary, so if you want to check yourself out and decide whether you think actually perhaps you need to develop some health goals, then you can do that as well. Some of the resources look at some of these areas. So we have a mnemonic performance, which kind of picks up some of the key areas of good overall health, but these really contribute to good mental health. So you won't be surprised by some of these things. It's risks in the environment, it's not having a good health routine, it's not doing your warm-ups and cool downs, and that's mentally as well as physically. Fitness contributes to good mental health. Overuse, doing too much for too long can cause stress, and physical and mental health are very closely aligned. Good rest is important. Looking after your mental health, having a good mental health practice like meditation, mindfulness that you practice is helpful. Knowing how to manage your anxiety, good nutrition, and at the end, the CE is the clinical expertise, and that's the thing that we're very pleased to be able to provide. And being able to get help at an early stage, as soon as you've recognised that maybe you have a mental health problem, that's the point that you need to go and seek help. And we can provide that initial assessment and also link you with a therapist if you're an Equity member. And that's the number. We have an email address as well. So any of the events that you want to attend are also on our website. So just go to that link and you can sign up, and they're free. So please do come to us if you need us. Thank you, Equity. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Claire. There we go. Before we wrap up, I know we're slightly over, but before we wrap up, it's my pleasure to invite Ian Manboard to speak. Ian invited me to speak, and it has been key to the work that's been done. And Ian is going to speak to the charter, which really is where the great work begins, the work that's already been done, the research that's already been collated and shared. It's now, with this charter, really using it to ensure that policymakers and employers take ownership of responsibility. So Ian, I invite you.
Lovely. Abiola, thank you very much. I know we are running over slightly. I won't be very long. I know you're going to thank our speakers, but can I say a sincere thanks to Mary, Erin, Lucy, Julia and Claire also. What you've underlined is the central importance of this work to the union, the way it's informed by research, the way it reflects members' daily experiences of poor mental health as they go about getting work, trying to complete that work. And I just wanted to spend a moment really just emphasising the central importance of good mental health to our members' welfare, but also just following on from what Claire just said, yes, there are individual conditions within people that make them predisposed to poor mental health, but as the research by Dr. Clements underlined, what is overwhelmingly the case is that the nature of certain factors within the entertainment industries undermine individuals' mental health, particularly pay, particularly around the insecurity of work, particularly around discrimination, both in work and the isolation that people have and exclusion that people have from work also. And I think as a trade union, it's fundamentally important for us to say that it's inexcusable to expect people to compromise their health, safety and welfare just to get a job, to be able to complete that job as a professional, to deny them consultation in the way that that job may end. And it's centrally important that I underline to our members today that the mental health charter that's been published today, that's had extensive media coverage. Please do keep an eye on the way we've covered the release of the charter today in our social media and the all member newsletter, the way that it underlines our demands on the industry to improve the welfare of our members. And I just wanted to go through those 5 charter points. Let me just go through them. Number 1, producers and engagers must address the harmful impacts of precarious work by improving pay and improving work-life balance. This is central for enabling good mental health and maintaining healthy, safe workplaces. Number 2, producers and engagers must adopt relevant safeguards in the workplace, such as mental health risk assessments, safe spaces policies, and consultation on organisational change. Equal attention should be paid to the mental health needs of all performers and creative workers, whether they're variety performers like Juliet, whether they're working on stage or off stage. All workers have a right to good health, safety and welfare. Number 3, producers and engagers must not exclude historically marginalised groups such as ethnically diverse workers from policies and practices designed for promoting safe, inclusive workplaces. Number 4, education providers must ensure that every young person undertaking educational training is inspired to expect dignity and respect in work. Young workers preparing to enter the industry should be encouraged to reject any form of abusive or discriminatory behaviour and understand that doing so is intrinsic to maintaining good mental health. And finally, the government must invest in our mental health services to reverse a decade of underfunding and reform the outdated Mental Health Act. And on that final point, I should say that the welfare of our members, the particularly difficult position that they're in, particularly economically at the moment, is being heightened by the ongoing cost of living crisis. And one of the things I would ask our members today is not only to work with us collectively as your trade unions, to report any instances that you believe impair your health, safety and welfare, and particularly your mental health. My colleague Zoe is going to share the contact details for equity staff. Work with us collectively to protect your mental health, but also let's place a significant demand on government to lessen the stress on you as equity members, as professionals working in the entertainment industry, to do something about the cost of living crisis. We're calling members to come out on the 18th of June to participate in the TUC demonstration to demand that the government does more. It's only by working collectively that we can resolve these issues. So Can I thank the speakers again? Abiola, I'm going to quickly thank you for being an excellent chair for today. I'll stop there for now and just say thanks to all of our members who signed up for today's event and who've joined us also. Thanks, Abiola.
Thank you so much, Ian, for sharing all of those informations and details. As we wrap up, I would love to echo Ian's point that taking care of our mental health it is a collaborative effort, and whilst there are many things that we can do as individuals, connecting as communities is vital, because there really is strength in numbers. And as we've seen from our 5 speakers today, hearing the variety of experience and knowledge that each person has makes such a difference then when put together in one block of research. And it's really exciting to see the work that Equity are doing. And should you wish to be involved in that work in the future, there are many links shared by Zoe in the chat, but also via Equity's website to access. As we wrap up, I would first love to say a huge thank you to our BSL interpreters, Tebs and Claire. And then I'd love to thank our 5 speakers for today: Claire Cordeaux, Juliette Burton, Dr. Lucy Clements, Professor Erin Williamon, and Mary Lane. Thank you so much for your words and your resources and your stories and your voice. Take care, everyone. Please look after yourselves. Reach out if you need any support, and we really wish you well. Thank you.